Hello! I have a question for you today. Think about the grade level that you teach. Do you remember what it was like to be in that grade? Hello, thank you so much for joining me. First of all, I want to give a big shout out to Valeria, who's known as the Spanglish Maestra on YouTube and Instagram, and thank her so much for inviting me to be part of this very special teacher collaboration. We're all making videos about what it was like to be in the grade level that we teach. So mine is called When I Was in 6th Grade. And I'm so appreciative and feel honored to be part of this because a lot of the teachers that are collaborating for this video are teachers that I admire so much, fellow teacher tubers that I've been following and learning from since I just started my channel a few months ago. So let's jump right in to question 1. Describe my 6th grade classrooms and what was it like? So of course, being in middle school, 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade, we switched classrooms and switched teachers. I don't really remember the length of our class periods, and I cannot really picture the classrooms necessarily, but I definitely know that we were in rows and we were not supposed to talk at all. There wasn't a lot of student collaboration going on. In fact, we got in trouble for talking. I remember being marked down on my report card for talking too much. Even though I was a very shy child, I became more talkative in middle school. I know it's hard to believe that, right? So we sat in rows. I don't remember the rooms being as colorful as classrooms seem to be today and as interactive looking. So straight rows, no talking, very serious. Question number 2, describe your 6th grade teacher or teachers. I had several teachers, but I'm going to talk about 2 of them. One of them was my PE teacher, and her name was Mrs. Ross. What was so cool about Mrs. Ross is the previous year she had taught 5th grade, and she was my absolute favorite teacher in 5th grade. So I was so pleased that I got to have her again in 6th grade, even though it was for PE. And she even wrote something in my yearbook. I'll go ahead and put it up here, a picture of her and then her note in my yearbook. She stood out to me, and it was like a huge bonus to have her the next year. Part of the reason I loved her so much in 5th grade is I remember we had to learn the 50 states. And she taught us a song. It was like, let's name the states, the United States. I don't remember the rest, but I remember I learned how to name the states that way. Another thing that I really loved about Mrs. Ross is she truly got to know her students, and I felt like she really took an interest in me. And I remember her having some kind of competition or lottery or something, but I won a lunch with her. And then on a day that we had off, maybe it was a weekend, she came to my house for lunch. I can't even imagine that happening this day and age. The second teacher I want to talk about is Mrs. Kennedy. Mrs. Kennedy was my social studies teacher, and she was so interesting. And I enjoyed listening to her because she had traveled to some of the places that she talked about and taught us about. So we're on to question 3. What is something you remember learning in 6th grade? Well, I happened to dig into the archives in my basement, and I found my poetry book. This is actually a binder that I've put together over the years. I started writing poetry about age 10, and I wouldn't say I write it really, often and consistently, but I have a lot of poems that I've written throughout my life. I always tell my husband, I want this out at my funeral so people get to know another side of me that they didn't know before. But here's a couple poems I wrote when I was in 6th grade. So this book was called Emotions and Feelings. And just to warn you, I'm not really an artist. Remember, I'm a math teacher. I have probably one side of my brain is a little more tapped into than the other. So I'm definitely not like a super great artist, although it's something that I've improved on over the years. But this cracks me up because my mom was just telling me when she was going through pictures to help me find some pictures, she found a lot of my brother who is 10 years younger than I am. And she said I was always in the background. I was like his little mother's helper and his little mother. And then I laughed because later that day, I found this in my Emotions and Feelings poetry book. And of course, this is an exaggeration. It's not meant to be the truth, but it says, anger is when your little brother spits in your face, hair, and all over your clothes just after he had a cookie. Now, I actually think that part happened. I express anger by spitting back, kicking him, then throwing him into his room. Actually, I can't believe I wrote that, and I have a picture of it. Now, obviously, this was just for the poetry book, but I thought that was pretty funny. Here is another one of my poems called Signs of Spring. Signs of Spring. When I woke up this morning, the sun was coming in and the sky was as clear as it could be. I went outside to find the birds making their nest. They had come back from their long winter's rest. The air was so warm, there was a slight breeze, but I loved it anyways. I'd rather be warm than freeze. That's just an excerpt. I don't need to read the whole thing. So you get the idea. Poetry is one of the things that I learned in 6th grade. Okay, I want to share with you the other thing that I learned in 6th grade that has nothing to do with education or a content area. And I'm going to use a dry erase board to model this, although I would have used just a piece of paper. We did a lot of writing and doodling on notes, but for today's purpose, I will use the whiteboard. So what I learned is that if you write 6AC, it can look like somebody's head. Watch what I'm talking about. 6AC. And then we used to finish off the head, make an eyebrow. Sometimes, we would add other features like some hair. So 6AC. This is one of the things I learned in 6th grade. We're just moving right along. Question number 4. What is something memorable that happened that year? So I have a few different things that I wanted to talk about. First of all, in middle school, we had a written publication called Middle Matters. That's where students would write articles, they would report on activity nights, but my favorite part was around Valentine's Day. Kids would write in like people's initials. So if they saw you with a certain, boy or a certain girl, they would put, like CB, that was me, Kathy Burke, plus JB. Well, I'm not going to say who that stands for, but I was so excited one time when that publication came out around Valentine's and my initials were put near the boy that I really did like. So that was very memorable. Another memory I have from 6th grade year, again with the Middle Matters, is we would do superlatives. That's what my daughter told me they're called. We just called it like best of back then, but that was when you say like cutest couple, best dresser, and things like that. And I was voted most likely to succeed. I'll never forget that, and it meant a lot to me. The last thing that was really memorable to me in 6th grade is I went to my first concert. I went with a friend of mine and her dad took us, and it was Loverboy. They had an album called Everybody's Working for the Weekend. Now I just aged myself. I realize that. Scratch that. Question number 5. Do you remember who your friends were in 6th grade? I sure do. My neighborhood best friend was named Jennifer. She did not go to my same middle school at that point, but she was somebody I hung out every day in my neighborhood. And I also had a guy friend named Joel that I hung around with a lot too in my neighborhood, and he also went to my school. And I had a best friend named Lisa. We were very different personalities, but we were together all the time. In fact, she lived about 3 miles from me, so I used to ride my bike to her house, and we would bike to the grocery store nearby, and we would get, it's pretty gross, I'm embarrassed to admit this, but we would buy a whole tube of cookie dough and drink hot tea and eat cookie dough. It's kind of gross, but it was a wonderful memory. Question 6. As an educator, do you do anything similar to your 6th grade teachers? I would have to say getting to know my students personally, showing an interest in their lives, not just in them as mathematicians, but in their interests outside of school. And as much as I can, make it real world applicable to them. Make it interesting. Explain to them how it relates to their world, to their future. And definitely tell anecdotes. Students love to hear anecdotes. Oh, I almost forgot. I didn't realize that I picked up something from my English teacher, Mrs. Zelke, in 6th grade. Take a look. Here is where she signed my yearbook, and she wrote, "Too good to be forgotten." I had no idea or memory that she did that, but that is what I write in my students' yearbooks at the end of the year, every year. Pretty cool. Final question number 7. Is there anything else about this grade that you would want to share? Well, look, if I want to be honest, and I think everyone would agree, middle school alone is rough. 6th grade can be very awkward. I was extremely shy till about junior year in high school, and I think I was very often misunderstood. I would walk through the hall looking like I was misconfident and misproud, but really I was very insecure and shy. So I didn't, act warm. I seemed maybe more of a cold person, and people thought I was stuck up, or arrogant, and that wasn't the case. I just didn't like small talk, and I wasn't great at meeting new people and making friends. On the plus side, there's so many opportunities, and your life can just explode in sixth grade. Well, at least when I was in sixth grade, we weren't in sports from the time we were very young, like 4 years old or 6 years old. So middle school was kind of the first opportunity that you could enjoy and participate in clubs and different things that interested you and different sports. I went out for cheerleading the next year and was a cheerleader for 5 years, so I found that passion. So sixth grade is an opportunity where your interests can really blossom and you can figure out more about who you are. Also, one benefit about sixth grade, at least in my district that I currently work in, and it was true where I went to school also in Michigan. In sixth grade, several elementaries joined together. So the opportunity to meet new people and have fresh friends was always very exciting, and I think it's very healthy for students. I do think that is one of the highlights of sixth grade for my own students year to year. Well, I hope you enjoyed walking down memory lane with me. I think it's really important to reflect and look back at what things were like when we were in classrooms and we were that age, so that we can really have empathy and compassion and understanding for our own students, so that we can emulate things that amazing teachers did for us, and also find our own path and unique way to reach and engage students. Please hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. My channel focuses on how we teach, reflect, and impact. And don't forget to watch all the other amazing educators and teacher tubers that are doing this video collaboration as well. We've got Too Cool for Middle School, the Caffeinated Class, the Sleepy Teacher, the Spanglish Maestra, Extra Special Education, Lara's Home Sweet Classroom, Kafupo Classroom, and many more. Check them out. They're all amazing educators. Until next time, are you ready for more?